Hello, everybody. This is Kyle here, and today I wanted to talk about the illusion of separation, the illusion of isolation. So, this idea that I want to talk about is the idea that often when we're going through our life, our day to day existence, you know, going to work, hanging out with family, things like this, um, we often think of ourselves as isolated in our world. You know, when you're walking down the street, you don't look around too much, you just kind of keep to yourself. Um, you talk to the same people, you go to the same places, and you end up in a kind of isolated little bubble in the world. Now, the way that this is an illusion is the fact that even if you are within your little bubble, that doesn't change the fact that other people around you can see you, other people are there, and there's a big world going on full of events that are simply occurring whether you are aware of them or interested in them or are willing to react and deal with these things. So you could try to isolate yourself to stop yourself from interacting with these things. You can try to limit yourself and try to keep in your little bubble. But the truth of the matter is that there's a big world out there that is going on whether you can accept it or not. So isolation often happens because a person is afraid of the outside world, sometimes for good reason. You know, the people outside and the people who you don't know, strangers, can be frightening because you don't know their intentions. You don't know exactly, if they're good or bad people, or if they are out to get you, out to hurt you, or something like that. So, going through life, it can be often easier to block yourself off and to put up a lot of big mental barriers so that you don't have to interact with other people, so that you don't have to interact with the world outside you. And this also happens a lot with when people get older and they become disconnected to pop culture. When you're young, a lot of the time you are excited to be part of like pop culture, excited to be, listening to the music of your youth and watching the movies and TV shows and all this. And there's a lot of that personal openness towards these things where you want to fit in with the group. But you get older and pop culture starts to pass you by, and especially because you have probably stayed in your bubble of you've stayed in listening to what you grew up with. For me, I grew up with 90s music, 2000s music during my teen years, and then university years was like millennial, like early 2010s music. So there was a while there where I was really out of the loop on pop culture and out of the loop on popular music, but I took the initiative to start listening to more modern music. And now when I hear this thing like new music sucks, it's all terrible, I actually think that's pretty ridiculous. There's a lot of it that I really, really like. In fact, most of what I listen to nowadays is new music, like for Generation Z people. So it's tough to go about life in a disconnected and isolated way. Often this has a feeling of depression and a feeling of discomfort. It doesn't feel very good to be isolated. In fact, most of positive emotions are approach emotions, approach feelings where you feel like you are moving towards something. So when you feel isolated and you feel like You know, I'm not going to go here. I'm not going to talk to this person. I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to watch this movie. You're always like reacting negatively to all these things. It's kind of like pushing you into a little corner, and with that, you can tend to feel powerless and like you're kind of lost in the world. And you know, a lot of older people do feel that way. Like I said, with pop music, pop culture, they feel like the world has changed in a way that they don't understand, and they feel out of it. And because they feel disconnected to what's going on around them, they'll react a lot of the time with anger and hostility. Be like, "This is annoying. This is stupid. My music was great." You know, it's like this is a big identity thing where it's like, you know, the stuff that I did was awesome. You know, the stuff that they're doing is really shitty. So, you know, isolation doesn't feel good most of the time. Most people, when they get isolated, are unhappy. You know, especially the people like the agoraphobics who aren't going to leave their house. You know, these people are unhappy most of the time, really. And you know, it's the people who are doing the opposite that are usually maybe not necessarily happier, but they feel more excited about life. The people who are embracing what's really going on in the world. You know, like for me, like I'm filming this video right now. I'm making a YouTube video. You know, I'm recording myself talking, but it's like there are people in houses all around me. There's a street over here. I'm in a town, you know, and the town is connected to a city within a province, Alberta, within a country on Earth, and within the Milky Way. Like the illusion of separation is that fear keeps us in our little cage because the cage is safe and comfortable. But it's an illusion, this cage, because when you really grasp it mentally, you know, you're aware that things are going on, that everything's going on right now. You know, that New York exists, LA exists, Berlin, you know, Saudi Arabia, Beijing, China, you know, Indonesia, Australia, Africa, South America. It's all going on right now, and you can choose to put on your blinders and be like, no, I can't deal with this, because it is a very overwhelming thing to be like, wow, I'm just one individual among 8 billion in this gigantic world. Like, it's a crazy thing, but it is simply true, whether you want it to be or not, whether you accept it or not. And people have all kinds of emotional reactions to being aware of a real world out there. All kinds of reactions, you know, like anger, which usually shuts you off. You know, it's like, this person really exists and they're really out there, but I'm angry, and it's like that anger is like, it stops me from interacting with them. Whereas if you were open, if you were like just like legitimately open and curious and just like interested, then you could form that connection, and you'd be able to talk to this individual. And it's an extremely interesting thing to actually be open to the world itself, like, rather than to keep yourself in this little tiny bubble where I'm never going to get hurt and nothing's going to challenge me, nothing's going to bother me. And once again, like, you know, the world is a dangerous place. You know, cartels in Mexico, there's wars. I think there's still a lot of wars in Africa. You know, the world is not a wonderful, beautiful, you know, place of sunshine and rainbows and lollipops. Like, you know, there's slums and there's ghettos, you know, in Brazil and South America and India and China. And it's like, so another reaction to this being aware of the world is depression, sadness, is feeling like, wow, this whole thing is pretty bad, and like, how do I continue on, you know, with the world, you know, being as it is. And I think really a lot of that comes from really just accepting it for how it is, like a brutal sometimes acceptance, but acceptance nonetheless of, yeah, this world is real. Like, it's, things are actually happening, and you can't live in an illusion and live it isolated. But at the same time, something that I've picked up on that I really think is true but is interesting is that being open to the world, fully open to the world, isn't, could society sustain itself if everybody was that way? You know, if everybody in New York City just started talking to each other, what would happen? You know, I'm serious. Like, what would happen if everybody in New York, everybody in LA, everybody in Toronto, they just saw each other on the street and just were like, hey, what's up? How's it going? How's life? What's new? What's the world like for you? You know? And it's something I've picked up on. I've started, you know, reading some pickup artist and seduction type stuff, and also generally just trying to open up socially with people, and started talking more to just random people, just, you know, actually just like going up to people and being like, how's it going? Like, how's your day going? How's life? And it's like, you have to break through this barrier of, like, you're a stranger, so I should be afraid of you. But if you can get past that, and if you can actually, like, talk to somebody, talk to anybody, you start to get this, like, such a more vibrant and complex and dynamic version of the world than what is usually on display for you, which is basically just politeness. Is like, if you go through your day afraid of having an honest one-to-one interaction with an individual, all you're going to get throughout the day is politeness. And what is politeness? It's a smokescreen of nothing. There's nothing there. It's an extremely formal little interaction where, you know, I say, how are you? Oh, I'm good. Oh, that's great. Have a good day. Nothing's happened. There's been no exchange of information. There's been no learning about somebody, really. There's nothing there. Nothing happened. Nothing went on. And so you end up living in an isolated little world, and it's not easy to live that way. It's really it's pretty sad, actually, to live very isolated, where, you know, the people around you, there's nothing dynamic happening. You aren't learning anything. You aren't improving. You aren't growing. You aren't experiencing anything new, all because there's these social barriers that stop people from interacting with one another. So if you can get past those barriers, which, like I said, the barriers are an illusion. They're not real. Like I walk by you on the street, there's nothing stopping you from talking to me. There's nothing stopping me from talking to you. There's nothing stopping you from slapping me or shooting me, you know. It's all very illusionary. And so this separation between people, it's mostly based on fear and social protocol, quite often. And people start to pick up on when you are open. I've noticed starting to get a lot of different reactions, sometimes really angry. I think before, when I was a more closed off individual, the reactions I would usually get from people would be just very ordinary friendly politeness or ignoring me, basically. Be like, yeah. Be like, bye, have a good day. And that's it. There's nothing there. But when I've started, like, making eye contact with people, which is, eye contact is the key to the soul, really. So if you're making eye contact with people, you're like, it can get very intense for some people if you're not used to it. I'm sure before I started making eye contact, if somebody made eye contact with me, it'd be a little bit scary, I would say. But now that I've started working on it more, it's like when somebody actually like looks me in the eyes and talks to me, I'm like, wow, you're here too. Are you willing to have like an interesting conversation? Are you willing to have a dynamic interaction here? Because a lot of people won't, like, and so it actually is very interesting when a person like makes eye contact or will actually respond and open up to me, like, as a stranger. Like, yeah, there's the fear there. There's the fear element. Like, something that I've had to accept is that, I'm the agent that causes fear for other people, and I wasn't even aware that was possible. I couldn't fathom that I was the one that was causing somebody else to be afraid. But it's like, no, yeah, definitely. Like, I can make people afraid. I can get people scared, and avoiding my eye contact and stuff like that. And it's a scary thing for a lot of people to really honestly talk to somebody else. But the interesting aspect is that, opening yourself up to the world at large, you become a much more robust and interesting individual. Like, I can even tell within myself, it's like my opinions of things, you start really meeting people, like, before, when I was at work, I didn't talk to people, but it's like I started talking to people, and I started actually like really like, like asking them questions about their life and stuff like that, and they kind of opened up. Not all of them and stuff, like, but some of them, and it's like they started teaching me things. And so, in general, like, isolation, like, think of it this way, that the whole point of school, the school system, is an effort in taking the isolated child and giving them information about how the world works, how things function in the world. When you're teaching them mathematics, you're teaching them some kind of logical formula that actually corresponds to reality and how things work in reality, right? So it's I've thought for a little while now that teaching really destroys the innocence of somebody, because once you teach that something is a certain way in the universe, there's no going back to how it was before. There's no, putting the jack in the box back in the box. It's, it's out. Like, once you learn, like, photosynthesis, how that works, suddenly the plant isn't as mysterious of a thing. When you start teaching people how, history went, it's like the world stops, being as mysterious as it was when you were a child. When you were a child, you might think like, your city just spontaneously came out of the ground. You might have those kind of thoughts, but it's like, no, history teaches you how things actually manifested themselves, right? So it's I think education kind of limits our view of the world. Like, it limits us in a weird way. It opens us up to the world as it is. You start understanding the world, but yet it also kind of limits us. So it's like a double-edged sword where you're destroying all the possibilities of how things occur, and yet you're also opening people up to how the world works, like opening them up, letting them see around them, letting them see the things around them, and connecting you to everybody. And it's like, when you realize like this is a small world, like, London and Berlin and Cape Town and New Delhi are a plane ride away. Like it's a globalized world, and you can isolate yourself, you can put on your blinders, and a lot of like nationalism is kind of like that too. It's like, America is the greatest, and if you like America, that's great. I like America. I think America's great. America has great cities, great people. Obviously, there's a lot of people there, and there's a lot that comes from America. But it is a global world, and when you become too nationalistic, you're basically saying that you're emphasizing the differences between people instead of the similarities. And when you do that, you're really closing yourself off to the universe, to the world at large, really. And you can't go through life. You can go through life like that, but it's no surprise that like people are very nationalistic, very, we're the best and stuff like that. There's a lot of anger that comes about through that, because you start to have to constantly monitor, like what's this person doing? It's like, if America's the best, then these Chinese, what are these Chinese doing? When it's like, if I could learn Chinese, I'll learn Chinese. Like, learning more is great, and especially like hearing people's experiences and things like that. It really opens you up. So, I think one of the key parts of self-improvement is getting past this fear of the outside world, strangers, and not isolating yourself. In a sense, it's kind of like leaving the womb. The womb is whatever is where you're fenced in. But when you leave it, it can sometimes be terrifying. Like someone from the suburbs going to the ghetto or something like that, where there's homeless people and drug addicts and gang members and stuff like that. Like that's kind of like leaving the womb, because you've left the safety of your little suburban area to experience something a lot scarier. But all of life is really an exercise in expanding your boundaries, like pushing beyond what you know. Because when you stop doing that, life ceases to have joy. I've found, it ceases to have excitement. That's for sure. And often excitement is joy. Excitement is what pushes a person forward. It's that forward progression. So, the illusion of separation, I guess, just to put, wrap it up, is that, look around yourself, don't be afraid to make eye contact, or try and make connections with the people around you. And a lot of it's nonverbal as well, and you'll start to realize that this is a big world, and there's a lot of people in it, and it's scary. It can be very frightening that there are people out there, but what's the alternative? The alternative, you put on your blinders and never go anywhere, never have an interesting conversation, never meet a potential partner, you never have an exciting night out with people or see something new, It's you gotta make that bargain of do I want to keep living an isolated life? Is that really good? Comfort can be a killer, I think, for most people, actually. People think they want comfort, but it's like sleep, sleep is great, but after 8 hours of it, it's kind of good to wake up and start experiencing some things, because otherwise you're just you're not even there, you're not existent, you're unconscious, you don't exist when you're sleeping, really. You're gone. And so this is life, is being awake, and seeing that things are dynamic, and that the boundaries between things are really arbitrary, and a lot of them are in your mind, and a lot of them are social programming, and how to find the balance between that fitting in with the social programming, not becoming a weirdo who's like, going up and talking to everybody on the street, but also pushing past your boundaries, because you know what? A lot of people are waiting for the person who's going to push past the boundaries, the person who's going to be like, yeah, most of this is arbitrary. Most of the differences between people are non-existent. And so I'm just going to say screw it and come talk to you and make a connection. And I'm not going to be afraid of it. And if I am afraid of it, I'm going to push past it. So that was about the illusion of separation. Hope that was interesting. Any comments or anything, please leave them below. Thank you. Have a great day.